Hello, and thank you for joining the Thursday edition of Journalist Hangout. I'm Ayodele Uzubakun. Today on the program, Delta PDP rules out imposition of candidates for 2023 elections as state government insists 150 billion naira bridging finance is not alone. And later on the show, Finance Minister suspends Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris, over alleged 80 billion naira fraud as EFCC traces more suspicious assets to him. I'll be hanging out with Babajide Kolade Otitoju and Olabisi Deji Fodutile. So if you're ready, let the hangout start now. Yeah, let's begin with the countdown to conduct of the primaries by major political parties for the 2023 elections. As the parties put finishing touches to preparation for the primaries, the ruling All Progressive Congress, APC, has adjusted its schedule of activities for the elections. According to a statement by the APC spokesman, Felix Moka, the special convention to pick the party's presidential candidates earlier fixed for May 30th to June 1st will now hold from May 29th to May 30th. Now, the primaries to select candidates for governorship and House of Representatives polls has been fixed for May 26th, while that of Senate and the State House of Assembly will hold May 27th instead of earlier dates of May 25 and 22nd. Julie, I was told that, look, this will enable the party to be able to send their delegate list to INEC as required, clear 1 week ahead of any of this exercise, that it is stipulated so that they won't run foul of the Electoral Act, that the electoral umpire, they require those political parties to send the names of the delegates so that they will be able to discern. So APC, that had earlier fixed 30th of May, they're now saying that, okay, we're bringing it to 29th. That is earlier. Does this add up to you?
Yes, clearly from the calculations being made by political pundits, the two parties are watching one another, and it appears the APC wants to see what PDP decides to do before it takes action. So the way it is now, APC will kick off their own exercise after the PDP must have concluded theirs. I don't know exactly what they want to achieve, but we've been told that they want enough time to be able to address petitions, protests, and all that may arise from the exercise. That's why they are creating enough time, enough window to be able to take care of all the protests and petitions that may result from the thing. But it's clear that they want the PDP to conduct the exercise first before taking this decision, because naturally you expect that before now everything will have been borne in mind before deciding at that time that this was their timetable, to then come back and say, no, we are going to do it at this time, after the PDP had set theirs in motion. It shows that they are trying to, it's like a football game. You are deciding based on the tactics that the opponent comes up with. So that's what I see. If you observe, the two parties appear to have been copying one another. The APC especially copying the PDP. You know, when the PDP decided that all the previous positions held by the North should revert to the South, it was the same decision that the APC took, which prompted some people to start thinking that the APC had decided to shift power to the south, but no such decision was actually taken. So you can see now, you're waiting for the PDP to make its move, see what transpired in respect of the exercise involving the PDP before beginning their own. So that they, I don't know, it's just a watching game that we are seeing.
And obviously, as the BKO said, it's a watching game. Some other parties that I wouldn't say they are inconsequential parties, you find them, instead of them to conduct their convention tomorrow or next tomorrow, because the window is open to them. Do you know that most of these other parties, they've lined up 2nd of June, a night before the deadline, to hold their own convention, so that whatever will be the fallouts from this PDP 28th of May and APC 29/30, so some people can still run 440 to come to their own seat. I don't know the way politicians, the way they do their calculations.
Absolutely, I agree with BKO. It's a watching game, and what you have just mentioned now is still part of the calculation. You see, though you may think they are inconsequential, but they are political parties. They are vehicles.
Vehicles to get
to power. And because they are vehicles, it doesn't matter whether they have members or not. They can always have a presidential candidate. And I guess what they are also thinking is that the fallout from APC and PDP, they could also benefit from it. So I guess that is why they are not too eager to conduct their primaries before the two major political parties. Because if they do, it means that they may not be able to change so many things. So it's actually, when you watch PDP and APC, you tend to think that the two of them are siblings in rivalry, just trying to watch one another. Both of them are targeting the same thing. They are targeting the same thing. So they are just watching, how can we get it? And if it doesn't work out this way, how else can we get it? So there is really no difference between the two. If you remember, PDP also shifted his own primary too. And when it shifted, APC was the one that was to do. And even me, I was expecting APC to shift its date, and it did, because you know that both are just watching themselves, and it's all about political game, really. And I think everybody is just interested in getting to that position of power, which on its own isn't a bad idea. You know, everybody wants to win, but I also guess that at the end of the day, June 2nd will soon be here, whether they like it or not.
BQ, one thing is certain. The Independent National Electoral Commission, they've said it clearly that they're not ready to shift anything.
Yes.
That the deadline is a deadline. That if they shift any of these dates, it will alter the 2023 election timetable. So the parties, they should just get their act together. They don't have any choice.
The whole thing is even governed by law. The whole exercise. There is a time ceiling within which the whole exercise should have been conducted. You cannot conduct it outside of that time ceiling, that deadline. So if you conduct it outside the deadline, you created a problem, a big problem for the INEC. And INEC is not prepared to create problems for itself because of the undisciplined attitude of and selfish attitude of politicians. Politicians, when they were calling for this, I'm like, what's wrong with these people? And even some politicians that you expect that they are very steady upstairs. They are the same people calling the INEC and saying, look, this thing is not possible. Why don't you move it? Why don't you move it? And INEC stood his ground and no,
we are not going to party and
we are not going to move this thing. We are not going to move it. Now let us see whether, because INEC failed to move this, whether they won't be able to do primaries. They just want to be spoon-fed to be treated like a spoiled child. This is the way
Running
they want
out
to
as now.
Yes,
Most
now
of them.
They
most
will
of the
do this
political
thing.
parties.
The notice was long enough for these parties to come together and conduct this exercise, but they continue to kick the can down the road, kick the can down the road. When you catch up with the can, they kick it further down the road. What's going on? Now they are monitoring one another, all just to ensure that this party does not gain an advantage over me. It's not the first time they are doing. Every election season, they do this. Because if you remember, APC exploited
in 2014.
In 2014, they exploited the disagreement in the PDP, and they welcomed PDP members
24
into the
hours.
fold. Honestly, if not for the massive defection from the PDP to the APC, there's no way the APC will have formed power.
They amended their constitution,
losing all those governors,
to make sure that
losing even a former vice president Atiku and the rest who walked out at that time, and many governorship candidates too, or aspirants. They moved to the PDP, to the APC. So they want to create a situation in which the enemy or a former enemy who failed to grab the ticket here, who is strong enough, can come to our party, and our party can reap bountifully from that exercise, that happenstance. That's what they are getting. And I don't blame the other parties. They have trained, these two big parties have taught the smaller parties how to conduct this business. You will see now the NPP and the rest of them, they are going to harvest disgruntled elements from both parties. And they are going to win some seats.
All right. In Delta State, South Nigeria, the gladiators are poised for electoral war, and the polity is feeling the heat. To douse the tension, the state chapter of the People's Democratic Party has assured aspirants that there will be no imposition of candidates, as the chairman and the governor have promised to provide level playing ground for all of them. Meanwhile, the decision of the state government to use 150 billion naira from the money owed it by the federal government as a bridging finance is still generating reactions. But the State Commissioner for Information, Charles Aniogu, insists that it is not a loan, nor any form of borrowing. Today, in Delta State, over time, since 1999, we know that it has been a PDP affair, and the
transition is usually without rancor.
Yes. But right now, we are looking at a situation where even within the PDP, that there are vested interests that is going to be keenly contested within that party.
Yes, given the nature of politics itself, of course, vested interests will spring up, and every contest is expected to be tough. It's not going to be easy. Delta State is one of the richest in Nigeria. In fact, it is described in terms of GDP, it is Nigeria's richest state. That's how some people describe it. And
Okowa's smart
yes,
city.
it's like the Kuwait of Nigeria. That's how some people view Delta. So the contest would definitely be very, very tough. Within the party, once you win the primaries in some states like Akwa Ibom, Delta, even Cross River,
You are like 80%
once
true.
you win primaries of the PDP, it is assumed that you've won the election. If you win the primaries of APC in Yobe or Borno State,
Borno?
anybody who goes to contest against you is wasting his time. They may not even count his votes. In terms of the decimation that will happen, they may not bother to count your votes if you contest against the APC in those places. It's like that in Delta. They've been very consistent, and they always found a way to move this governorship price between
The major
the senatorial
dominant,
zones, between the senatorial zones, and at the end of the day, everyone is happy. So I don't expect that under Okowa that anything will change. If they could do it in such a way that someone from clearly a minority group, a minority ethnic group in the state, in the person of Uduahan, could become the governor, then that's to tell you that Delta PDP has something that they should be able to sell to the rest of Nigeria. Remember in 2006, this idea of rotatory presidency, rotatory, what was it called, power between senatorial zones. This was part of what was suggested to be part of our constitution. But because Obasanjo wanted third term, it was an opportunity for greedy politicians to brush aside some very novel, very nice ideas and threw everything. They threw the baby with the bathwater. You know? So the idea of sharing power between 3 senatorial zones in a state is something that is fine. It's something that, in my view, should be exported to the rest of Nigeria. So if Okowa, who is from Delta North, can just ensure that this kind of transition that we've seen over time is sustained and not disrupted during his own time, I'm sure that everyone will be happy and the party will be in a good position to retain power.
But there's a factor, Gidi has given analysis out, the factor that we even have a deputy Senate president coming from Delta State, and he entered through the Labour Party before he joined the ruling APC, and now he's even contesting to be the governor. That's Ufi Omagige, the deputy Senate president. So he's also a very big factor in the race.
Yeah, he is, and from APC. But if you look at it, has Delta State ever been ruled by an opposition party?
No, since 1999.
Yeah. So I think they still have, PDP is very strong. In some states, like he said, it's like they worship the party. I remember during the time of, in 2019, when Akpabio defected to APC.
Yes.
And he wanted...
It's quite suicidal.
Yes, he wanted his candidate to still be in charge in Akwa Ibom State then. As powerful as Akpabio was, he's a very powerful politician, and he has a lot of influence in Akwa Ibom State. But the people themselves, they believe so much in PDP for whatever reason. And in spite of his influence, the current governor still won in that election. So for Omagege, I think it's going to be a very strong battle for the opposition.
You forgot to add that even Akpabio was well defeated in his attempts to go to the Senate.
So go to the Senate.
So because when you get into a senatorial contest and you could only win a local government, that's your own local government, then the questions, claims that you are so strong, was well defeated, went to court, and he did not succeed even in the tribunal.
Yeah.
So that's to tell you that in Akwa Ibom, the PDP remains the most dominant party.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that Akpabio, as strong as he was, got into the contest and got on the platform of the APC. He won only one local government in the senatorial contest.
Okay. Joining us via Zoom is from Asaba. For more discussion on the 2023 elections in Delta States is the State Commissioner for Information, Charles Anagu. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good evening, my brother.
Yes. He do, and I used to do and say, he do.
This cap should not go back home with you. You have to send it by Zoom to us.
I'll use Bluetooth and wire it to you.
He used to be my favorite analyst then. He's also a journalist, a seasoned journalist for several years. Okay.
Thank you. You're doing very well, both in the station and, of course, your program, Journalist Hangout. I've always enjoyed your analysis.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's talk about Delta. What's the situation like in terms of the preparation for the 2023 election? I want to believe that's in the minds of everyone now.
Well, the family of the PDP, like you rightly mentioned, is still strong here in Delta. Of course, you do expect that now that the 3 senatorial districts have had a shot at the #1 position in the state, you do know that the discussion as to which senatorial district to start from again could possibly somehow come up in some person's mind. But there is no problem. The strength of the governor in Delta North has made it possible for all the persons in Delta North in the PDP not to want to contest. And so for that reason, nobody is taking a shot at the governorship seat from Delta North. We have candidates from Delta Central, majorly, and then of course, a few others from Delta South. And that is because in the course of time, we've never had cause to prevent anybody from any senatorial district from taking a shot at that position. But like I've always mentioned, the sentiments that exist in the minds of the leaders usually sway the electorate, and indeed those who are to take decision at this time around. Now we're talking about the delegates to vote in a certain direction, and that's not going to be different this time around. But we can tell you that the gladiators are very busy. They have been crisscrossing the length and breadth of the 270 wards in the state, and of course the 25 local government areas. There have been arguments as to where is the governor likely going to pitch his tent. But of course, you do know as the father of the party this time around, being the governor of the state, anybody movement is likely going to give advantage to anybody that he moves in his direction. But the governor has tried as much as possible to make it clear that he and the party would prefer a level playing field, which is why he has asked all the delegates, all the contestants, to reach out to the delegates the much they could with a view to securing their support. And to the best of my knowledge, the contestants have been very busy crisscrossing the 270 wards interfacing with the delegates. That's where we are at the moment, preparing for next week primary of the governorship. Of course, before that time, if the time doesn't change again by this weekend, we'll be filing out as those who are delegates to elect the contestants or those who are seeking to join the State House of Assembly.
We always talk about this level playing field, and some of us that will be covering politics for some time, we know that there's always a favorite. That any governor that has spent 8 years will want somebody that he has this kind of, we have this kind of preference for somebody to actually succeed him. And I don't know if Governor Okowa has anybody in mind, or they will still allow everybody to go to the field and still test their strength. But what I'm saying is that, look, does he have a preferred successor?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, he has not announced anybody as preferred successor. But of course, you do expect that even in a home where you have a father and the children, in spite of the fact that the children may have emerged from the loins of the father, one way or the other, you may likely have somebody you believe will be able to either keep the legacies of the family going forward. So that could be a possibility, but he has not announced anybody to either myself or those who are in the closer or the inner circle of the government. And what he has made clear is that everybody who is contesting, funny enough, are actually his friends or his colleagues one way or the other. Then a few others have also worked with him as staff, while others started politics with him in the very late 90s. So somehow he has come a long way with a good number of those who are contesting. Okay. But what he has assured and what he has tried not to do is not to bring up some form of intimidation. The field is level to the extent that everybody is free to canvass for support from the delegates. Nobody is stopping any delegate in any local government from receiving any of the contestants. Nobody is asking the contestant not to meet with anybody. So there has been this more like family affair, but of course, you do know in a contest, once in a while you receive jabs from one corner. If whoever is contesting believing that giving you that jab will possibly knock you off and then make you lose your balance.
Okay, Honorable Commissioner, let's just take this quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll come back to you. Please hold on. This is Journalist Hangout, and we still have the Commissioner for Information on Delta State. That's Charles, Mrs. Charles Anago, with us. Thank you for staying with us, Mr. Charles.
Okay. Lately, we've been told that the APC is making solid gains in Delta State, and the Deputy Senate President, who is said to be interested in the governorship of the state. We've seen him attending rallies with huge crowds. What are the chances of PDP retaining power amidst the reported resurgence of the APC in that state?
Well, I will agree with you that the APC and specifically the Deputy Senate President is making a solid inroad, but to the extent that it's on billboards. He has a whole lot of very beautiful billboards that dots the landscape of our state. So if you look at it from that point, you will assume he's making inroads, but billboards don't actually vote. If it's in terms of having many persons to join him in the APC, it's not likely going to have even a good number of persons join him for so many reasons. One, Senator Dr. Ato Ifeanyi Okowa have raised the stake, in spite of the fact that the state have always been a PDP state. His performance is something that have also further cemented the bond that exists between the party and the people. And I'm happy that some of you have had cause to visit Delta. We invite people to come and see what we are doing, so that it doesn't look as if we are talking from either a prototype or speaking about things that exist in maybe in form of Photoshop. We want people to come because we have what we have done on ground for you to see. And so that is going to make it very, very difficult for the APC and make it much more easier for the PDP. Then secondly, the very abysmal performance of the APC at the national level is also another factor. I don't need to dwell so much on that because I want to believe that's not the topic for today, but I do know that those of you in the studio are very much aware that between 2015 and now, Nigeria has not been in the best of shape. And Nigerians who have lived in this country are there to be able to analyze how well the party have been able to exist as a political party. For some of us, we believe that the party have existed more as an SPV, that is a special purpose vehicle. And having realized the reason for its formation, it's finding it difficult to come together to exist as a political party. Otherwise, how do you explain the number of...
How do you explain the tremendous crowd that we've seen the Deputy Senate President muster at his rallies?
The same crowd, not
I've seen
billboards,
some very
impressive
crowd. I'm not talking about billboards now.
Even if you come from Lagos and you want to hold a rally and you have enough money to send the buses to the people on the streets, you will also be able to garner crowds. The question is how realistic those crowds are. When you look in the middle of those, midst of those crowds, you will see that majority of them are actually not really persons from Delta. I don't want to begin to tell you where they are from so that it doesn't look as if one is discriminating. But when you go to a rally, we know how our people behave, those who believe in the party. There are those who also move from one place to the other. Any other political party can afford to gather such crowds. It's not just about the crowd, it's about what exists in the minds of the people. You have rightly mentioned before now, in Delta, and of course, a number of states in the South, the PDP more like exists in their bloodstream. You have also rightly captured it. I served in Yobe as a UCOM member in the year 2000. And at that time, it was clear that anybody who want to contest against APP at that time, which now metamorphosed in the course of time to APC, will be moving against the tide. Ditto states in the, most of the states in the South. Delta is not a swing state. You could talk about states like Edo, even Lagos, in spite of the fact that It has always been handled by those at the moment now, those in APC. You know that Lagos is more like a swing state. There's a possibility that PDP could win in Lagos, but that possibility in Delta is very, very remote. And it has become much more remote with the performance of Senator Okowa, and also being very, very much in charge of the activities of the party here in the state with his leadership style.
But the Senate, the deputy Senate president is popular.
He won
for him to have won the senatorial election
with Labour Party
in a small party. That's testament to his.
If you look at the politics of Delta since 1999, you discover that those in the central for a very long time have always had cause to have more like a divided vote between the ruling party, that's the PDP, and then of course any other political party. And from 2003, because of the influence of a great Oboru, a good number of persons from that place have always used him to climb because he has some form of control of the electorate or the voters in that particular senatorial district. And so, which is why even when Mero contested in 2015, he saw that Oboru also did better than him in that passage. And so going to 2019, what they did was to plead with him to come and fly their flag as a flag bearer. And all of them now decided to hide under him. But that is no longer in existence because somehow they didn't treat him well after they have climbed. So he has also vowed that he is not going to be in the same train with them. So that is going to be a very huge disadvantage. But Delta North and Delta South, the spirit of PDP lives here. And so no matter what he does, he's not going to have a good showing in Delta North, in Delta South, and even in Delta Central.
Okay,
because
Charles.
the candidates,
on the final note, Charles,
that many persons are looking at in Delta Central
on the
tend
final
to be
note,
very well grounded.
Tell us more about the 150 billion naira bridging finance planned by the government. What are the chances of APC winning in the state?
If you take a look at the issue of the bridging finance, you discover that people are playing politics. Loan everywhere in the world, I'm talking about even the general loan everywhere in the world, is allowed to exist as a way of either governance or even in communities, as a way of moving and achieving certain results in time, while you now plan as to how you are going to defray that particular loan. But in this case, what we have is that the federal government is not in a position to hand over the whole funds to us at once, which is our money, as it were. And individuals are free to look at what we want to do. One would have expected them to interrogate where the areas where we are deploying the funds. But those who want to play politics don't want to look at the things we want to do, because they are looking at the money and then they are looking at how they can distract us. But we are not going to be distracted. We have said with this loan, we are going to solve a whole lot of problems in terms of the infrastructure and prevent the possibility of escalating prices. We had our ESCO today. In the course of today's ESCO, we considered no fewer than 12 different memos that we had to review the cost that we had approved earlier. Upward review. And of course, you know why that is the case. You award a contract for 1 billion naira, 4 months in the course of time. Yes. That bill will move to as much as 1.4, which means 400 million would have been added. And calculate the percentage. And when we now had this opportunity that this particular fund, rather than waiting for the next 5 years, where more than 50% of the value would have been lost, then we felt that it was better that for us to first take advantage of 11% interest, which is far better than the 50% that would have been lost in terms of value in the money. That's one. Secondly, that these projects that we are also tackling would have also continued to add value to our people rather than wait for the next 5 years for them to begin to reap value from these projects. Besides, Delta is one of the very few states that migrated from the old pension scheme, which is analog in nature, to a much more digital approach, which now the contributory pension scheme. And at the time we migrated, they were issued what we call a payment for past services. Because there were individuals who had worked for about as much as 30 years, we migrated them into the new pension scheme. And what that meant was that the 30 years they have worked, who pays for it by way of contribution? And when we calculated that 30 years that they have worked, which started from the last administration, of course that was when we migrated, it now led to a huge backlog of money that should be paid to these persons, who first of all are debtors,
yes,
who have paid their dues, who when you pay them, you would have also been able to help to reflate the economy of the state. These class of persons, for us to also bring them at par with the reality of the present day and help to reflect our economy, we have decided to earmark $20 billion of that amount to service.
Okay.
No. Now, for those in the local government,
we don't have time again.
I
want to thank you.
Workers, but they are also debtors.
Yes.
We're also giving 10
Charles
billion.
I want to thank you, Honorable Commissioner for Information, Delta State, Charles Aniago, a colleague. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution.
Thanks for having me.
Certainly, you'll be back.
Yeah. And finally, when the hunter becomes the hunted, or those who we entrust with our common patrimony turn out to be the thieves, then we're in trouble. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, has suspended the Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris, over the 80 billion naira fraud allegation against him. The minister's special advisor on media, Tanko Abdullahi, who confirmed the suspension, said it is indefinite and meant to enable unhindered investigation into the allegation. One of the campaign mantra for this administration was fighting corruption. When they were coming into office, I want to see the kind of system we run that will enable an accountant general to have access at any given time. Jide, 80 billion naira is mind-blowing. 1 billion naira is an embarrassment. Not to talk of 80 billion naira. How?
In the course of my investigation, I was told that it's actually higher than 80 billion. And the person who spoke to me is in the EFCC, somebody that I trust so much. He said it's actually higher than 80 billion. So when the EFCC is talking, they are saying at least. So when you say at least, you've left something that you can call an open-ended thing. It could actually, it can be less than 80 billion, but it could be greater. So he's telling me now, he's telling me that that money, is actually higher than 80 billion. That in the course of time, we will discover more. And we've been reading stories now that they've discovered some fresh heist committed by an accountant general, that the president extended the stay. Which means that the extension merely afforded him more time to steal money. For a government to arrest its accountant general, that should tell you the level of the rot. It should tell you that we are in trouble as a country. We are in big trouble because one individual, 80 billion, and I've been told, I repeat, I've been told that it's higher than that. In fact, somebody was saying, look, this is a joke. It's higher than this.
80 billion. I'm
telling you, and God is my judge, I've been told that it's much higher than this. So don't be too shocked about 80 billion because we've been told that it's actually higher than that. This is what we are going through. We have not done enough in terms of the war against corruption. War against corruption should not simply be about arresting people. It's about stopping people from being able to steal at all. Not to the point of even stealing as much as they are stealing. And we have some very responsible Nigerians who will steal without looking back, who will steal as if they have many lifetimes. If you steal some billions,
this man cannot spend it in his lifetime.
Somebody who is much older than me.
Somebody
who should have been retired earlier and even got a pension.
To have retired, that means 60.
How much time do you have left? How many people do you want to leave it behind?
His children cannot finish 80 billion.
I don't know. If people make the habit of even stealing what they don't need to steal, if people make the habit of buying what they don't really need, don't be too sure that even if they have access to the entire Nigerian till, that they won't find somewhere to go and waste the money. People
Accountant General of the Federation,
they don't need.
Somebody that is meant to be the custodian. And so when you have a system that is so loose.
It's so loose. That is the thing. That's
a system so loose that 80 billion naira will go almost unnoticed, and they're telling us that it's more than 80 billion naira?
Well, let me just say this. Some people have even argued that EFCC is coming rather too late. There is a professor from Bayero University, Kano. As far back as 2020, he wrote a piece, Professor Barao. He wrote a piece about this same Accountant General of the Federation. And he said it specifically that this man is like a builder, is like a business person, a merchant, that he owns the biggest supermarket in Kano. And he said, he's my brother. And he also said there in that piece that he also owned a lot of properties in Abuja, in different places,
Dubai,
and all of that. Now, remember that what we are talking about, the 80 billion mind-boggling amount you are talking about, is simply the money that he goes through consultancies and different kinds of things. Now, we have not gone into IPPIS, which the Academic Staff Union of Universities has insisted to be a fraud, which a lot of people have accused the AGF of actually putting in names of dead people, and all of that. We have not got into that. By the time that one is investigated, do you know what can come out of this? And it's just so terrible that the Accountant General of the Federation, that is supposed to be the person that is monitoring the spending and ensuring that there is no stealing, corruption, and the rest, is the chief. Yes, so is the chief stealer. It's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate. And to
it's like, what's the translation?
You use cat to guide fried meat. So it's so unfortunate. Really, it's really unfortunate. And to now imagine
and
that,
I'm sure there's many of them in government.
Yes,
currently.
now
there are many of them.
I have a cousin that read mathematics in the University of Lagos, and we were doing calculation one day, and he told me that if you have 1 billion naira in your account, it will require you to spend 100,000 naira for 27 years before you exhaust 1 billion naira. 100,000 naira, 365 days. 100 times 365. So that for you to, that is 365 million.
Those ones, they don't know how to spend money. Those kind of people don't know how to spend money.
And their own standards are low.
Yes.
The standard of the Nigerian politician is not that low.
Okay.
He's already
I'm told that we have to take this break and take this commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk more. Please don't go away.
Dear distinguished elected and statutory delegates, my name is Mohammed Hayatud. As an accomplished banker, a seasoned economist, and a turnaround manager, and a technocrat of competence and distinction, I come prepared and equipped to offer optimal solutions to the nation's multidimensional and multifaceted problems. I want to help rebuild our dear country, restore the competence and integrity of our public institutions, and rapidly transform our economy and society. I possess impeccable pedigree, as well as latent and specific ability to hit the ground running. I have the depth and the breadth of knowledge and the sophisticated worldview to unleash a new era of prosperity, peace, and stability. It's time to take Nigeria back, and together we can. My name is Mohammed Hayatud.
On the arrest and suspension of the Accountant General of the Federation over 80 billion naira fraud allegation. Join Yori Folari as he discusses exclusively with Senator Shehu Sani. Catch up with the details of this interview on This Morning, Friday edition, 20th May at 11 a.m. only on TVC News.
Welcome back. I can tell you I'm still flabbergasted.
You are still in shock.
Overwhelmed and flabbergasted. No, it's
just short of words, man.
It's
where 100 million people live in low poverty, 33% unemployment.
And we don't punish. Because we don't punish, somehow you just see that, okay, maybe a knowledge prosecute or somebody or Attorney General will just come to court and say we have decided to stop trial because the person is making refund and all that. You know, the way it happened with that former customs man, Nnamdi Kanu. Attorney General just showed up in court and said, no, trial has ended because we have decided to collect some money. In Israel, they are jailing former prime minister. In our own case, those who are not even as big as former president, and we let them steal us blind, and nothing happens. So it will not stop. The biggest concern for me is when these kind of things happen, Nigerians further lose faith in their country. Nigerians further think that unrighteousness is right. In our world today, there is a constant conflict between righteousness and what is not righteous.
If you are upright, you are not popular.
Yeah, but the more we see people do this kind of things and often get away because our system is a useless system, the more young people will hate their country.
Yes, they will do Yahoo.
Yes.
They will do everything.
If you like, let the EFCC be catching them
yes,
up and down.
They will do anything to get money.
They will not stop. Because they
face.
think that this is what is right. And in our country, they are the same kind of people that you give them heavy titles. Heavy titles. They are the people that we show respect to in parties. Those who are honest, they abuse them. They say, look at him. Is he the only one there? We have now demonized good people. And we now deodorize bad people. We make them smell like roses. So what kind of a country is that? A system that allows that kind of money to get away is a terrible system. That's what we should be. Not simply to arrest people. Yes, we must make it impossible to steal this kind of money.
To get that kind of access.
Because when you steal this kind of money, you are denying other people infrastructure. You are denying people access to health care. Because you won't be able to buy drugs. Look at some of our hospitals. We are not allocating enough to hospitals. Yet, some people are allocating 80 billion to their own pockets.
1%.
And that is why ASU will tell you that they cannot call off their strike.
Yes.
Yes. ASU will not. With this, the government say they are broke, that they can't afford it. How do you want anybody to listen to the government that they are
asking for? It's not up to this amount that
when an individual is taking 80 billion, then what is the role of the Auditor General of the Federation in all of this matter?
I heard that the Auditor General had even flagged this individual in the past.
In the past.
I have seen the Auditor General come up to tell us that
some MGs
weapons were stolen
from
the police armory. What have we done? I have seen the Auditor General come out to tell us that people are refusing, they are bypassing the TSA and keeping money in private accounts with the connivance of irresponsible bankers.
And nothing happened.
And nothing will happen.
So that's the problem.
So the man who is Auditor General can shout himself worse as long as the system permits.
It is on record. It is on record that he has done his own.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go and read the latest report from the Auditor General, and you will appreciate the extent of the mess that we have sunk into. We just don't punish. We allow people to get away with stealing us blind.
I have to go.
I don't know. It's just too sad, and it's just too sad. And to imagine that so many Nigerians.
There are many of them that we have not. There are many of them that we have not identified.
It's such a sad day for.
There are still so many of them that we have not identified.
Very sad. Very sad.
That is what bothers me. There are still so many of them that we have not identified.
Oh.
Sad.
Tomorrow we'll be having another presidential aspirant from the All Progressive Congress. You want to keep a date with us. And that's our offering today. Join us tomorrow for another episode of the program. Join us on Sunday from 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Journalist Hangout on Sunday. We're on YouTube, youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I'm Ayodele Usubaku. See you and God bless Nigeria.